So I thought today we would talk about crisis of faith, a loss of the inner knowing of your path and what you're supposed to be doing, and that time in our lives that we often face, and for some of us we would call it the dark night of the soul, when we're really feeling unsure of our purpose, of why we have chosen this path of life to walk, and of how we find our way through the labyrinth and the maze that we feel ourselves in emotionally and spiritually. And anything can cause this to happen. It could be perhaps a loss and a sense of grief with the Five of Cups. It could be sadness over a loss of a friendship or a situation in our life, the death of a loved one, the loss of something that was deeply meaningful to us. It could be mourning over the end of a relationship, or the memory of a difficult time in our life in the past, perhaps our childhood, our relationship with our parents or the people who were fundamental in raising us and who shaped our being, and the experiences that we have as that being on this planet with the Three of Cups. And it could also be the energy of the moon as we traverse this physical form and trying to understand the spiritual side of ourselves and the spirit messages that come through and the energies that are wishing to talk with us, and feeling really misunderstood about that, and or unsure of ourselves on our path. Are we supposed to be doing this? Is this real? Is this something we're making up? Are we crazy? Are we insane? Are we alone? And that can feel incredibly terrifying and can create a sense of loss and sadness and fear within ourselves. Perhaps we're going through a time similar to the Five of Pentacles, when we feel completely alone and shut out, and when we're experiencing the instability of perhaps the finances around us, or even what we thought to be our home where we had set our roots down, and now we find that that's incredibly shaky and not what we thought it was. Perhaps a relationship that's been very long term in our lives, something we thought we would be in forever, is coming to an end, and we're experiencing the rockiness of that collapse, and now having to find out what is actually our foundation and what supports us. And of course, with the Five of Pentacles, that takes us right into the Tower's energy, or the Blasted Beach in the Journey of the Hidden Realms tarot deck. This feeling of the fact that we've been shaken to our very core, that circumstances, either with people, with jobs, with places in our lives, have brought us to a space where everything that we believed has now fallen away, and we are left alone, and we don't know what we believe in. We don't know what's actually true. We don't know what speaks to our souls. We can't hear the voices of the energies that work with us, and we feel incredibly alone. Perhaps we're in a space of the Five of Swords, where we feel like everywhere we look is a battle. Everything we do, we need to be constantly defending and protecting ourselves. That there's no safe place for us to feel that we can trust someone. And so we are constantly having to prove ourselves and prove our understandings and our inner knowings. But even that we have to defend ourselves literally against other people trying to take advantage of us as well. I think the card that really sums up this time that we might be facing, that I'm discussing right now in this video and that we're discussing together, is the Eight of Swords in the Journey of the Hidden Realms tarot. This is a time when we're feeling incredibly trapped, incredibly lost, and that we're very unsure of ourselves and how to find our way out of the labyrinth and the maze that we find ourselves in. We know that one wrong step and all is lost. And so it's really a matter of trying to figure out what is the next best step, how to find our way back to ourselves, how to get to know ourselves and to understand ourselves. And I think this is something that we all experience at least once or twice in our lives, but for many of us, this is something that happens in cycles for us, and that we will step into in some ways time and again in our lives. And perhaps this time it's with a long-term relationship that's coming to an end. Perhaps this time it's about we're really feeling lost on our spiritual path. Are we supposed to be doing what we're doing? Are we supported in doing what we're doing? Are we just crazy? Or is this something that it's a calling and we're meant to do here on earth? Perhaps it's because we're afraid of stepping into our spiritual power, and we're desperately trying to find the excuses around us so that we don't have to do what we need to do. And that's where the Four of Cups comes in on the journey too. Because when we're facing this time in our lives, what we're really being encouraged to do on our journey is to step into a space of self-reflection, of understanding our situation and realizing that we have to create a shift within ourselves and our experience to find the beauty in our current present life and what we're experiencing, and to understand that the way through the maze is knowing ourselves, is loving ourselves, and being completely open to this journey. We've chosen this third dimensional experience for a reason. And the reason is different for each of us, but finding it involves looking within. It involves a necessity for time to ourselves, for ourselves, and an understanding and love of ourselves in the journey. Because we cannot have an understanding and a love and appreciation for others, especially people who we are feeling are fighting us right now, are engaged in tearing us down right now. We cannot find a way through to forgiveness with those people unless we first of all understand ourselves and love ourselves in a way that we don't need anyone else's approval to feel that love. So if you're currently experiencing this in your life, the way to open up to that energy is to engage with, and I'm going to look at this as tarot, but you can apply this however you want to in your lives, is to engage with the energy of the High Priestess. This is when we have to have our own inner journey and our own experience with ourselves. This really does mean that we have to spend time alone. Now, if we're in a situation where we really feel like we can't do that, there's at least a few moments you can find in your day to sit with yourself and allow yourself to feel whatever it is that you need to feel. And the moon ties in with this energy as well, in her aspect of trusting that intuition and that psychic knowing about ourselves and our journey. So we have to quiet ourselves enough to hear the energies and the beings that are wishing to speak with us, and also to hear our own voice and our own self, and to understand what it is that we need to do to find ourselves in a space where we are connected with our experience and where we are following our bliss, as Joseph Campbell would encourage us to do. So this is a time of the hero's journey. This is when we interact with the Fool. But in this space on the wheel, where we are right now, in this dark night of the soul, or this being lost in the labyrinth of our own journey and our own shadow side, we're not ready to step into the active energy of the Fool yet. We're still interacting with this time of knowing, of meditation, if you want to call it that, but really spending time with ourselves and letting go of any need for approval, any need for someone else to encourage us or tell us what to do, and to understand what it is that we want to do and what our experience can become and is and has been. So this is really about knowing ourselves and listening to the messages that come through for us. This doesn't just involve physically listening, it can involve signs and energies just making themselves known to us about what our path is. So I'll share an example of that with you. recently I was driving home from work to go pick up Vincent, and have been experiencing these feelings myself of late. And I was driving down this country road, and I happened to look up, and on top of this big old farmhouse were 2 huge turkey vultures sitting right there. And I always know when I see birds or I see different animals that this is a connection being made with my higher self, if you want to call it that, with the spirit guides that I work with the positive energies, and the energies of the all that surround us all and that communicate with me clearly. And so Turkey Vulture was showing up for me to share with me a message that I needed to hear and be reminded of. And so this is an example of how we can experience a connection with the spirit of all that is, and also with our higher selves, if you choose to look at it that way. So it's really about being aware enough of our surroundings and ourself and our own being, first of all, to acknowledge where we are and what we're experiencing in our life, and then to step into being aware of what the messages are that are coming through for us, and how we find the inner knowing within to know what the next best step for us is to traverse our way through that maze and step into a space where there's understanding of ourself and all other beings on this planet. Part of stepping into that space does involve the work of temperance. And so we really are encouraged with temperance to find the mix, right? That energy of fire and water. Find the mix of the pain or the lack of feeling that we might be having in our present situation with the energy of ourselves when we imagine ourselves to be whole, and integrating those feelings in a way that gives us an understanding of what our whole experience is and what we want to step into in our experience. So it really does involve the temperance and understanding of where we are, and again, of ourselves, and why we're feeling the way we're feeling. So if we're presently experiencing a feeling of disillusionment, it's because there must be a looking at ourselves and a true acknowledgement of our situation instead of running away from feelings and actions that are uncomfortable to us and that we are either afraid of or we're not proud of, and we feel a sense of shame and guilt in our lives about that. When we're experiencing shame and guilt, and this can be something that's all-encompassing for us when we're on this place in our path, that everything we do creates a sense of shame and guilt within us. And one way to know that we're experiencing that is that we're constantly apologizing to the people in our lives for everything we do. For simply breathing, we feel like there must be an apology made. So when we're feeling that shame and guilt, that's a sign to ourselves that we're not living authentically, that we're not giving ourselves enough love and self-care, and that we're not acknowledging the divinity of our own being on this planet. So this really does call for the work of temperance, which is honoring where we are, honoring how we feel, which means acknowledging how we feel, and then crafting with that the understanding of what would feel better for us and what we could do to feel that we're living authentically. And of course, we can't really have a conversation like this about crisis, about disillusionment, about feeling lost on our path that I call it, when I feel this way, that I've lost the thread. I've lost the thread of my path. I've lost the thread of my journey. And so it is time, when we're experiencing this, not only to interact with the energy of the High Priestess, the moon, temperance, but also to interact with the energy of the star. So this means that we're being encouraged to find a way to light a candle on our path, find a way to see the hope at the end of the tunnel for us, because oftentimes when we're in this space, it's so trite and easy to say, well, be positive, find the positive in the situation. But that's very difficult to do when you're in a space like this, when you're feeling extremely lost and unsure of what the next best step is. So this is when, with the star, we interact with it in finding the candle, finding the flame in the dark, for ourselves to see that it's there, and we're journeying to find that space and to step into that space of hope and faith and trust in the universe and ourselves. So we're really being given an opportunity to travel very deeply within when we experience this loss of faith, or we feel that everything has fallen down around us. Everything has fallen down. I mean, we're in that tower space where we've been shaken to our core, where the foundation is found to be faulty, and we really have to start from scratch. So we're really being given a gift of the fact that it's time to get to know ourselves again, because we've changed in a way that we don't understand. But it's also important to honor and be very gentle and loving with yourself, in the understanding of the fact that this is a dark time for us, and we need to honor that we're in that space and give ourselves the attention that it is necessary for us to have at that time. So this does mean that we have to be selfish. And again, not selfish in a negative way. Selfishness is really self-care most of the time for us. So this is about self-care. And this is about acknowledging how we actually truly feel, and where the shame and guilt are residing in our physical being and in the relationships around us. And those are going to be the biggest indicators for us of what's really going on. So this is a time for exploration. You really are like a deep sea diver right now. You're that explorer out in the mountains, and it's just you, and the exploration is yourself. So this is really a time of grief, sadness, mourning, but it's also a time of exploration and awakening. So I hope if any of you are currently experiencing this cycle in your lives, this time of crisis, loss of faith, depression, deep sadness, anxiety, a dark night of the soul for some of us, that you will be able to take this time as an opportunity to get to know yourself better and to sit with who you truly are, what truly makes you smile, what makes you happy, and what fulfillment is to you. And this looks different for each of us, and there's no right or wrong. And so I encourage you to do whatever you can to give yourself the time to get to know yourself right now, wherever you are on the wheel, to understand and get to know yourself. And also to take small steps, and they don't need to be large, but small steps to discover what it is that is happiness to you. And so again, we're interacting with temperance here. Perhaps what happiness is to you for today is simply to maybe put some lipstick on, or get that tea or coffee that you really love, but you never allow yourself to take that 5 minutes to go to that cafe and grab that for yourself. Okay, maybe what feels best to you today is to get out of your pajamas, and maybe that's it. And that's okay if that's it. These are small steps. Remember, we're interacting here with the Eight of Swords as well, especially as seen through the eyes of the Journey of the Hidden Realms tarot deck. So this is about a small step to set ourselves free from the imprisonment we've placed ourselves in. And that does mean taking responsibility that it's ourselves who's put us in this situation. But the beauty of taking that responsibility is that we are then in charge of freeing ourselves. And so it can be very small steps to help us to feel whole again, and to feel fulfilled again, and to understand that we are following our bliss. Or as I shared briefly, that we have found the thread again. We found the thread back to our path. So I felt really drawn to make this video today, and I hope if you've watched this that it's given you some hope if you're currently experiencing this. And if you're not experiencing this, perhaps when you do find yourself in this space of loss, of grief, of disillusionment, of hopelessness, that some of these cards will come to you and you'll be able to interact with their energy. But if you feel drawn to any of the cards we've talked about today, pull those cards out and meditate with them. Carry them with you. Sit with their energy. Allow yourself to feel what it is that you need to do in your life to create a shift. And again, that really does involve getting to know yourself and loving yourself. I wish you all many blessings on your path. And please know that you are supported and loved on your journey. You are never alone. and the guidance is always right there with you. So blessed be everyone. Have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you in the next video.